Where we're going, we don't need roads. Get ready for Science! It's SciFriday on SkyWatchTV. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert, and joining us, our SkyWatchTV science editor, my best friend, my wife, Sharon K. Gilbert.
Hi, honey. How are you?
Doing fine. Yes, I've saved a whole bunch of those classic science fiction lines.
You're just crazy enough, aren't you?
Yes,
You're
right.
sort of that guy, sort of Doc
Brown.
Brown. Yeah.
Doc Brown with suspenders.
Yeah.
Well, another interesting week in the world of science as we move ever
never
closer toward this blending of biology and technology.
Oh, sure. As a matter of fact, if you can't remember that today's the day we're doing SciFriday.
That's right.
The day's coming when I could just flip a light switch and I could instantly help you to retrieve that memory.
So the old metaphor of the light bulb going on over the head is actually going to become somewhat apt, huh?
Oh, yeah. There was an experiment recently published about researchers who took mice, and it's always mice, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Those mice, they want to rule the world. What are we doing today, Pink?
Same thing we do every night.
They took these mice who had memory issues, and probably older mice or mice who had been, told to forget, hypnotized.
Mm-hmm.
No, they actually used optogenetics, which is where you take a certain gene that responds to a light stimulus and you insert it into a neuron. And these mice would forget how the maze worked, or they would forget where their food was, or whatever the issue was, they couldn't remember it. Much like in Alzheimer's patients today, or maybe someone who has a memory issue from trauma.
Soldier
exactly.
injured in battle. Yeah.
And the discovery was made that through optogenetics, you could cause an extension of what's referred to as a skeletal bridge between neurons. In other words, allow sort of I'm going to copy this into the clipboard kind of thing for a few hours. With the light stimulus, these mice suddenly were able to access the old memories. They could use them for a short term, and I think the longest period was a day. Of course, this isn't a mouse, so I don't know how a typical short-term memory for a mouse is, but that we as humans use that all the time. We access our long-term memories. Think about somebody says, okay, what'd you do when you're in the 4th grade? What was your first kiss? Where did you first hear this song? You access all those things, but we lose the capability to do that in certain issues of dementia, including Alzheimer's. So I can see that this would be wonderful. The problem occurs for me in optogenetics when that light stimulus, or as we discussed a few weeks ago, a magnetic stimulus.
Right, because you can't always get a flashlight inside your skull.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever the external stimulus is, to be able to suddenly have you remember something that may be an implanted instruction.
Ah. It
may be a traumatic event that suddenly causes you to go ballistic because you suddenly remembered this. Imagine, you're maybe a little young for this, but my husband is younger than I am. I'm a cougar. In Vietnam, a lot of my fellow students were going to the Vietnam War, and when they returned, many of them had major issues, and they would have flashbacks, and suddenly they would just forget that they were sitting at a table eating with their family. They would suddenly be back in Vietnam, and they would be undergoing terrible circumstances. So imagine if you could do something like that. It's like it's that episode of Millennium, and Millennium is a show we refer to many, many times because there were so many themes in it that I think are important.
Way ahead of the curve.
Idea of they flip a switch, and you're like a truck that they drive you wherever they want you to go.
Yeah, delivering whatever cargo, payload,
and that cargo could be an instruction to harm someone. It could be an instruction to vote a certain way. I don't know. Let's just be that because we're all voting now. But it also can be an instruction to, pass a disease. There may be some sort of inherent issue within you that has been programmed that is meant to harm others.
Well, and because this goes beyond just triggering memories, optogenetics implies that there is some sort of change that can be affected at the genetic level?
That's what they do. They insert a gene that encodes for a light-sensitive receptor.
Okay.
So whenever I shine that particular wavelength at you, then you see it and it responds.
Or do it electromagnetically, as we discussed last week.
Yeah, exactly. You're programming the DNA to respond to your instructions.
So this could potentially, looking at the the negative consequences or the potential misuses of this technology be used as a way to control people.
Yeah, and as you know, as believers, as Christians, we look at this prophetically, and the idea that a new world order will exist where one man wants to control the entire population of the world. One way to do that is to thin the population to a very small, controllable size. Another way is to make sure that those people who are left over are easily controlled, perhaps through external
pliable,
means.
malleable, and, and passive.
So to me, it's a big concern. It's wonderful. I'm all in favor of helping people regain those lost memories, but there is definitely potential for abuse.
And it's very similar to the discussion, well, we mentioned this last week, the DARPA initiative to try to develop the brain interface with computers to restore cognitive technology. And of course, we talked about, and you've talked about the IARPA initiative, what they're calling the Apollo project of the brain, trying to reverse engineer a cubic millimeter of the human brain to find out how signals are passed so they can develop better neural networks, machine learning, and artificial intelligence.
That's exactly what it's
And
about. And speaking of that, there was an AI that just passed Go.
That's right.
Did not collect $200.
Oh, well, I bet that was just, well, of course, it's owned by Alphabet, which is about the richest tech company on the planet. They didn't really need it. That was really interesting because the Chinese board game Go is apparently the most complicated board game in, like, ever.
Ever, yeah. It's much more complex than playing chess.
Yeah.
So to have an artificial intelligence that could think through all of the various options, if I do this, then this, and win.
Yeah, 3 games in a row against a grandmaster, which experts said that wasn't going to happen for at least another 10 years.
No.
Which means that the technology toward artificial intelligence is a lot farther along than we thought.
Yeah, this was a Chinese company too, wasn't it?
Well, but the company that owns it is Google. It's AlphaGo.
AlphaGo.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's kind of a Chinese name.
I know.
Alpha Super Team Monkey Go or something.
That's exactly what I thought of when you said that. Oh, dear.
Of course, the holding company for Google now calls itself Alphabet. They've changed their technology, just a little bit. But
the Internet of Things, it's everywhere. In fact, I showed you this video before we started recording. It's of Cookie Monster.
Yeah, and I'll show a clip of this as you're describing it.
Cookie Monster is baking cookies. Who doesn't love Cookie Monster? I love Cookie Monster. I grew up, and a lot of the kids that I babysat for were watching Sesame Street. It's been around for a long time. This commercial is all for Apple's Siri interface, and Cookie Monster is using Siri to help him time the cookies.
Right.
And of course, it's very funny and cute. But to me, there are 2 demographics being reached in this ad. One, young kids who are still watching Sesame Street,
love Cookie Monster,
love Cookie Monster, but also my generation that grew up with the song, which is used in the video, Jim Croce's Time in a Bottle.
Yeah. Sesame Street debuted, I recall, when I was very young. So my generation, our generation, really, you may have been a little older when it was, when it debuted. So that
I was probably dating by the time.
But certainly our daughter was, watched it.
Oh, yeah.
As I had to do all the character voices. And I can tell you, Grover and Cookie Monster really hurt.
They really were.
You're right. It's hitting at multiple levels. And the idea that's being conveyed here is that we need to depend on this artificial intelligence in the phone or the Amazon version, which is Alexa in the Amazon Edge, that little cylinder.
Did they change the name of it? It was called the Echo.
The Echo, I'm sorry, not the Edge. You're right. It's the Echo. But it listens to you all the time, but it connects back to the internet. And so there are transactions, exchanges that are recorded and stored somewhere.
Do you really want, talk about accessing long-term memory, do we really want, though, our children, our homes, constantly listened to?
Probably not, but frankly, because we all have cell phones now, they already are.
Oh, of course they are. Of course they are. But if you use Siri and have Siri on by default, then you've given them permission to do it.
Yes, yeah. And that is something that is troubling that we need to, but it will only continue to spread as the Internet of Things grows because the technocracy movement wants to monitor our everything that we do because they can't decide how we should live unless they can monitor what we're doing. I want to tell, we're going to break for just a moment here because we got some information on an opportunity from Defender Publishing to share your story as part of the release of Nita Horn's wonderful new biography, No Fences. We'll tell you about that and then tell you how your lawn is going to be spying on you when SciFriday continues after this. To celebrate the release of Nita Horn's inspiring new book, No Fences, SkyWatch TV would like you to tell your story because, after all, even if you don't think so, you actually have a story.
Send in your story, and we are going to choose the 10 best, and they'll be published for Christmas release in an anthology of those stories, along with the book that you buy that is actually only $19.95. Am I right on that?
That's correct.
For free. Tom Horn, crazy guy, he's throwing in a journal which on its own, most of these retail for $20 on their own. So this journal is to help you start writing your story. When you buy the book, not only are you going to be enrolled in this and you can send in your story, but you'll get a plastic pony, you'll get a journal of your own, and the proceeds from the book are going to help fund the studio we're building for SkyWatch Women, and Nita Horn is going to be one of our panel members.
The 10 authors who are selected for the anthology, published by Defender Publishing in time for Christmas, will also receive a $500 cash prize.
And that'll go a long way at Christmas time, won't it?
Yes, it will. Even if your story is not one of those selected for the anthology, if you've taken the time to write your story, you've left a legacy for your children and for your grandchildren.
Amen to that.
For complete instructions and details on this opportunity, please log on to skywatchtv.com/nofences. Welcome back to SciFriday. I'm Derek Gilbert, along with my best friend, my wife, Sharon Gilbert.
Hi, sweetie.
The Internet of Things, just very briefly want to touch on this because it just struck me as really funny. We've always make a point of looking for Internet of Things articles because of the surveillance that we are allowing of our lives because of the convenience, the entertainment value. There's a security aspect to being tracked all the time. If an accident occurs and you can call for help when you're disabled, or
your car just calls for you.
Your car calls for you. So there are some aspects to it I see that are useful. But the other side of that, of course, is that we are sending information somewhere so that our lives are constantly being monitored, categorized, quantified, and then analyzed.
Wait a minute, we're in the village.
We're in the village. We're darn near in the Matrix. But yeah, the South by Southwest Tech Expo, which happens every year, President Obama chose to attend that last week instead of Nancy Reagan's funeral. But Miracle-Gro, the company that makes a lot of things for home and garden, has announced its technology to connect your garden, your lawn, to your home network, so it can basically tell you when it needs watering, feeding, pruning, or whatever. Guess
what? I can tell without, some AI telling me. I can actually look at my lawn and tell that it needs something.
Exactly. Of course, the flip side of this is that technocrats will also know how much water you're applying to your lawn. And in places like California, where they've had that terrible drought in recent years, that could be really useful information to a technocrat. So anyway.
It's all about control.
It is.
Well, we were talking a little while ago about Apple and the various, the Siri and that interface, but they have just asked for volunteers for a new study as to whether or not their Apple Watch can actually predict health crises. In this case, they want to see if it can predict a stroke. So there's an app that they're asking volunteers to download. But what I'm asking is if it can look at all of our various data, heart rate, pulse rate, activity, maybe even putting in what it is you're eating that day. This is all about deep learning. There's a machine somewhere trying to figure out exactly how we work. Again, back to optogenetics. Let's just assume the worst ever happens and an AI does arise that is a super AI that wants to, and while some will say this will never happen, that there will never be a super AI, but we can't, those who look at things spiritually have to assume that there's a possibility that these can be inhabited. So let's say there's a super AI that is or is not inhabited, but at least wants to control you, and therefore it can do so because it knows everything about you individually, knows exactly what it can tweak in your body to make you die.
That's a really interesting point, and one that we come back to periodically because of this possibility that the brain as an electromechanical device can be inhabited or overpowered by an external non-corporeal entity, a demon. That story actually hit the news, and this slipped past me a little bit. You remember the story from about a week ago, the Uber driver in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah.
I had, of course, seen the story about how he's accused of shooting and killing 6 people at random. But the man charged with the deaths, Jason Dalton, told police that the Uber app took over his body, that he was possessed by the app. It says, he told detectives after he was arrested, it has the ability to take you over. He said that there is a demonic, satanic symbol. He said he recognized it as the Eastern Star symbol on the app, and that once he spoke what the symbol was on his phone, that the phone, or the app which connects to his car, because of it's interconnected through Bluetooth, would take over his body. He says he doesn't remember shooting any of the 6 victims. Now, most of the media didn't report on this, and he admitted that he didn't want to tell police because they would think he was crazy, and I think most of the media assumes that he is crazy. But what if these electronic thinking machines are as susceptible to being overpowered by an external corporeal entity?
What do we see in
non-corporeal
Scripture?
entity.
I saw Satan fall like lightning. That's
Prince
an electrical,
of the power of the air.
Exactly, that's an electrical charge,
Yes,
lightning.
yes.
So if he is and can inhabit electrical charges, then I would say it's very possible that it could, that's very disturbing.
Dalton describes to investigators how a symbol on the app would change colors from red to black. It is, and I quote, almost like artificial intelligence can tap into your body, end quote.
Oh my goodness.
He said you can actually feel the presence on you. Told detectives that Uber requires all drivers to have a 2007 model car or newer so the app can connect to the car. That's how they know where it is, and they can dispatch you to the person who needs an Uber ride from somewhere to another. But he claims he doesn't remember any of the, and he's expressed remorse for the killings. But again, what if? And I still think it's fascinating that E.W. Bullinger, the Bible scholar from the late 19th, early 20th century, after hearing about Nikola Tesla's work on an artificial brain, speculated in his commentary on Revelation, which you can find online, that an artificial brain might be the image of the beast that is given life and people then worship it.
Yeah.
We're now in an age where the technology is just about there for that.
Well, as a believer, I have to say that while all of these things are disturbing, we were told that these things would occur. Therefore, as Christians, don't get me wrong when I say this, as Christians, we need to rejoice on the one hand.
Yes.
It is like sweetness, like honey in our mouths, but it's bitter in our tummies because we realize that this is going to affect many, many millions of people throughout the world that fall victim to it.
Right.
So now's the time to proclaim the gospel.
Amen. Yes, that is the thing. We need to know that, need to remember always and be motivated by the fact that the time is growing short. We have pointed out in presentations that we're living in an age now where the technology exists, and I have no doubt that God can make this happen supernaturally, but that when Jesus appears in the clouds at the head of a heavenly army, that all nations would see him, and people would, despair for seeing, oh, wow, we've been wrong about this whole thing. But one cell phone connected to a 4G connection could stream that video in real time. The 2 witnesses in Jerusalem, the whole world will watch them.
Yes, I know.
God could make it happen supernaturally. I have no doubt of that. But the technology exists for one person with a cell phone camera can spread it in real time to the entire planet.
Oh my goodness.
And that is, we're watching prophecy fulfilled in the technology that we carry.
Isn't that exciting?
It truly is.
As a scientist, I find these things so incredibly encouraging in many ways, because I believe that the Lord is going to show many people through these technologies, because the internet is his field as well as the enemy's. And so we're going to be able to spread the gospel message through the internet, through the phones. I mean, let's take advantage of the tech while it's there.
Yes.
Instead of just totally, saying no to tech. I say let's embrace it and use it for the kingdom.
Exactly.
Because the enemy is using it for his.
That's absolutely
true. It's all part of this the war field that we're standing on. We're on a battlefield. Yes.
That's right.
Really quickly, because I know we've only got a few minutes left, I want to make sure that people who may have this in their pantries, go check your pantry. Make sure if you have bumblebee chunk light tuna in there, that you check the the UPC code on it, because Bumblebee has said they know for a fact that some of there was an entire batch, in fact, that has the best by date of February of 2016. Codes on the product begin with the letter T. We'll post the actual codes that are in the story.
Yes.
But Bumblebee says that these have they can cause life-threatening disease. I'm assuming it's botulism, but it's some sort of food poisoning that is life-threatening. So please, if you've got Bumblebee tuna in your pantry, probably the best thing to do is just throw it out.
Yeah, better safe than sorry.
Yeah, that's what I think. Also, speaking of health, I just want to really quickly, a lot of people that I know have had the flu or some sort of respiratory illness. Guess what is going around again?
What's that?
H1N1. Swine
Really?
flu's back.
Oh. Well.
So if you've been ill for a while, or if you've got a lot of kids who have been around you and been ill, you might want to ask your doctor, please test me for H1N1.
That is interesting. Now, I know it's been here in America, we tend to be very Amerocentric. We don't really pay much attention to what's going on outside the world. And of course, my browser just crashed as I was trying to look this up. But anyway, there was a story that I mentioned a couple of months ago, in that in Eastern Europe, Ukraine and other areas in Eastern Europe, Moldova, and, that an H1N1 strain that they call the California flu was going around.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
well, it's probably the same strain as this, because this is the 2009 strain.
Okay, yeah, and then, okay, that was the one that was causing so many problems there just a few years ago. So
this is the one, and this is actually from Wichita Falls, so this is Kansas.
Okay, well, yeah, something to pay attention to as we get closer to. Even though we're moving out of what is traditionally flu season.
Well, except that H1N1 doesn't necessarily
have a season?
Track with the same season that seasonal flu does. So yeah, you might want to ask, but remember that you'll likely be told to take antivirals. So ask your doctor lots of questions before you take something like that.
One other quick thing, because you made an interesting point. We've talked about the Zika virus and those genetically modified mosquitoes that they are testing.
Skeetergate.
Yeah, Skeetergate. But they're finding that these irradiated mosquitoes, the irradiated male mosquitoes that they're sending out into the wild to produce, dead offspring, basically.
Yeah, they're not as
competitive.
Yeah,
for
competitive
mates?
is the way to put it.
Yeah.
Competitive is the way to put it.
Because the female mosquitoes recognize there's something wrong with those male mosquitoes.
I think that may be what's going on, because it's amazing. We think that we know what we're doing as scientists, but the truth is that God is better at this than we are.
You need to go out and interview female mosquitoes. What do you look for in a mate?
Go to little skeeter bars.
What are your turn-ons?
But here's why we need to worry about this here in the United States, because right now the FDA has gone through an approval process, which doesn't mean that they do any rigorous testing. They merely read the data that's submitted to them by the folks, in this case it's Oxitec, who want to release mosquitoes here in the U.S. They're going to release them in Florida and the Keys.
Yeah.
The FDA said, fine with us.
Well, we'll just keep an eye on this story and see
female
what happens.
mosquitoes are like,
These guys
they're worthless.
they're mutants. Well, during the month of March, as our way of thanking you for your support to SkyWatch TV, we're offering you a very timely gift, especially now that President Obama has nominated a replacement for the late Justice Anthony Scalia.
Yeah.
The DVD by Alan Keyes and Alan Sears, America's Courts, Progress and Peril, along with a keepsake wall plaque. That's our gift to you for your gift of $20 or more during the month of March while supplies last. You can log on to skywatchtv.com/donate to find instructions. SkyWatch TV tomorrow on... twice tomorrow on the Victory Television Network, 3:30 p.m., and the Christian Television Network, Coast to Coast, 7:30 p.m. Tom Horn talking about his book, Zenith 2016. Don't miss that.
Oh, yeah. I love talking to him.
We could just sit down and just crank out shows every day.
Time just flies when we talk to him.
Absolutely. Well, it will go quickly when you watch that program if you haven't seen it yet. It's also available on the SkyWatch TV channel on Roku.
Don't forget SciFriday page at Facebook, and send us your emails, SciFriday@skywatchtv.com.
That's right. Have a blessed weekend. Until next week, for Sharon Gilbert, I'm Derek Gilbert. Thanks for watching as we keep watch. This is SkyWatch TV.
From the time she was little, Nita dreamed of horses. Every childhood fantasy rode on the back of a heroic white steed, coming to save the day.
I don't know how long I've had this love in my heart for horses. It's just always been there. And when we were little girls, my sister and I would play all day long. I was always the white horse and she was always the little pink pig.
Let's pretend Lightning and Rosie can fly.
But everything changed in a heartbeat. On December 9th, 1971, a tragic car accident claimed the life of my dad and my best friend and my little sister. And I wondered after that if there was anything left to believe in.
Move aside, let the ambulance through. Please move aside.
As a child of 13, I felt like I had lost practically everything. And I wondered, is this it? I mean, where do I go from here? I could not have imagined back then how God could use horses, of all things, to restore my faith and vision for the future.
Starting April 19th, get your copy of Nita Horn's inspirational new book, No Fences, and learn for the first time her amazing story of loss, survival, determination, and healing. How the vision and love God gave her for these beautiful and majestic animals eventually led to the 150-acre Whispering Ponies Ranch, a general retreat facility, as well as a premier training location that specializes in using and gifting therapeutic animals to benefit the herding. Other care facilities, schools, and ministries across the nation.
When God puts something in your heart, it's there for a lifetime.